Dreaming of a better sleep? Tossing and turning is not your destiny. And Ollie is here to help. Ollie invites you to sink into sweet, sweet slumber to improve your mental and physical health and overall wellness. More than just melatonin, Ollie's ingredients help you unwind your mind for a delightfully dreamy drift off. Sleep is on the way at Ollie.com. That's OLLY.com.
Today on CityCast Boise. It's always been hard to access childcare in Boise, but it's gotten so much worse since the pandemic. Lori Fascilla is the director of Giraffe Laugh, an early childhood education center. She breaks down the childcare crisis and how they will soon be welcoming more children into their facilities. It's Tuesday, March 19th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Lori, finding childcare is a topic that definitely stirs up a lot of opinions and feelings in Boise. Are working families able to access childcare in the Treasure Valley?
Well, they can access it, but at this time, waiting lists are long, including our own. We're well over 400 children on our list. With the recent decisions that were made in the legislature, more than 55 centers have closed since those funds were taken away. And that's throughout Idaho, not just in the Boise area.
Oh, okay.
We're an industry in crisis, and that makes a crisis for families searching for childcare.
Absolutely. And as the need for childcare in Idaho continues to grow, what is the biggest obstacle that you face as a childcare provider?
I think the biggest thing is that parents really can't pay more. Tuition for childcare is so high right now, it's pretty astronomical, but we can't afford to pay less. There's no way that we can keep teachers unless we are paying a more livable wage. I know of a lot of centers that have classrooms that are closed. They have maybe, a two, three, four, five classroom open, but they can't keep an infant toddler teacher, so those classrooms are closed. And this just creates a problem for not only the provider who can't bring in enough revenue to support their business, but to parents that are out there trying to take part in the workforce.
Yeah, and that I was gonna say that's where I kind of wanted to jump in. I've always approached this as a parent, and as a parent who spent many frustrating years trying to navigate this issue. I think the question is, why is it so difficult to find childcare here?
It's really difficult to find childcare all across Idaho because our industry doesn't have any sort of infrastructure around it. There aren't any systems building going on. And that's because we're one of only 3 states that doesn't fund any sort of early childhood programs under the age of 5. And so as a result, we don't really have a system to rely on. We don't have any infrastructure, so it's all just private business trying to satisfy the need. And the need is way greater, especially as the Treasure Valley grows, than we can keep up. And, the pandemic just exacerbated all of that. So I know it's always been hard. It's gotten harder.
Yeah, well, so you're not getting any state support.
No childcares or preschools do. The state just has not invested any funding. They do accept some federal funds, but again, there isn't any system building around those funds. It's just distributing to individual providers throughout the state.
So all of that burden, all of these childcare costs are absolutely just being shouldered by parents and guardians and families.
And providers,
Yes.
which are primarily women, right? They're hugely women-owned businesses. They're trying to keep their businesses alive.
Yeah. Now, Giraffe Laugh is different than other daycares because you are a nonprofit and you've primarily focused on these low income families. Where does your money or funding come from? Is it just from the tuition and fees that parents pay, or do you have other streams of income because you're a nonprofit?
We do. we have that mechanism where we can fundraise. So we have events that we do every year. We have individual giving where we ask people to join our Dream Big Society for 5 years. We definitely write grants, probably 40 to 50 a year, and then engaging our community for sponsorships and donations. Right now, I would say 54% of our families are in the low to moderate income category, and then the other are regular to high income.
So, how much does it cost to send a child to your center?
It's a lot, and our rates are more in the median range, but for an infant, close to $1,500 a month.
Wow.
And so for someone receiving a scholarship, that is significantly less, but those funds have to come from somewhere. It still costs us that same $1,500, right? So if they're only paying 500, that other 1,000 a month has to come from somewhere. And so that's our job as a nonprofit to figure out how to fill in that gap for that particular individual. We want to make sure that children who are living in low to moderate income households have access because their outcomes are more like only 25% of them are ready when they enter kindergarten. And so by really impacting that population, we're changing our community, right? We're able to impact our community for a lifetime and they're able to help their families move out of poverty at some point.
I would say creating that ripple effect for these families is so important for our communities.
Shipping can make or break a sale, so optimize how you ship your orders with ShipStation. They make it easy to automate and manage orders no matter how big your business grows. And they might even be able to help reduce shipping and warehouse costs. So optimize and keep up your momentum for growth with ShipStation. Sign up for your free 60-day trial now at shipstation.com and use the code POD. That's shipstation.com with the code POD.
Before the break, we were talking about how your nonprofit status helps you keep operating, which is remarkable since the pandemic led to more than 300 childcare spots closing. But Giraffe Laugh isn't just surviving, you're expanding and welcoming a fourth location. How are you growing in this really tough moment for childcare?
That's a great question. So, Governor Little, recognizing that the workforce was not coming back to work after the pandemic, put together a task force and, they discovered or it was validated that there just isn't enough childcare available, that these 300 centers have closed and another 55 since June, since the funding was taken away. Just to be clear, it's getting worse, but there was some ARPA funding that was left over.
What's ARPA?
So ARPA stands for the American Rescue Plan, and those were federal funds that came into our state, and there were funds that were available to dedicate to whatever the most important things were, and the governor felt that that was expanding childcare and did convince the legislature to adopt this money. And so there was 15 million in 2022 and 15 million in 2023 that was has been spread throughout the state in order to lift up childcare. Now, keep in mind, these are federal funds. There's no matching from the state or anything like that. But to their credit, it has been dedicated to increase childcare slots. And we were awarded in 22 for a new building that we're going to start here in just a little bit at Franklin and Orchard, right near some affordable housing. And recently, we were just received another award, and we're partnering with the Boys and Girls Club to open a center in CUNA with them.
That's fantastic.
It is. It's wonderful. We're excited to do it.
So you talked about those 55 centers that have closed just recently. With so many of these facilities closing, are you able to absorb those losses and take in those kids?
No, that's why we have a waiting list of over 400 children. We've always had a big waiting list, but it's just gotten worse. And our concern, of course, is that there's maybe some substandard care out there that people are having to access, and especially those who are the most fragile economically. And there's kind of this whole group of people that are called ALICE. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I
that, but it's
haven't.
it's asset limited, income constrained, employed. But Alice families are just like they sound. They're employed, but they don't have very many assets. Their income is constrained because they're maybe getting paid lower wage jobs and they just don't make enough to meet their obligations. And sometimes childcare is more than rent. If you have two children, right, it can be a lot more than your car payment.
Yeah.
So people are making really tough choices when they're living in Alice. And we do have a lot of families that are in that group where they just need a little bit of help, not a lot, but a little bit just to be able to, satisfy their commitments.
Are those maybe more typically the families where we're seeing that a parent will just completely leave the workforce? Typically a mother or maternal parent will leave the workforce to care for the kids. Is that
Absolutely.
kind of the situation? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because if you're saving, let's say you have a preschooler and an infant, that's $2,500 a month that you're spending on childcare. And that's a lot of money. You have to make a lot of money in order to do that. And if you're making a minimum wage job or something along those lines, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. With these two new facilities that you're going to be opening, how many childcare spots will that open up in this area?
It'll be 80 here in Boise and 66 in Cuna. So quite a bit. We're going to be doubling our impact. We serve about 170 children right now.
Oh, that's incredible.
We'll be well over 300. Yeah, we're excited.
Wow. I would say chip away at that list.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I would like to know what your tips for parents in the Treasure Valley are. I'd like to maybe create a mini guide for parents, starting with, the question that everybody wonders about, how early should parents be reaching out to a childcare center?
Well, this is kind of funny because we encourage our parents that we have now. It's like if you're even thinking about getting pregnant, put your name on our list
Oh, really?
internally as soon as someone finds out. Like right away, their child's name is on our list. And of course, if you're already enrolled with another child, we're going to give priority to your second. But always, always, as soon as you find out you're expecting, there's a wonderful number you can call. It's 211, and it's a great resource. You can also go to findhelp.org, and findhelp.org will also help you connect with providers. And the goal is to get on as many lists as you can that you find appropriate, right? You definitely want to go and check them out, but call us, get on our list because just like you, everybody else on that list will also be on other lists and be looking for other options.
Okay, something to be aware of. Okay, so the pregnancy test pops positive
Right.
and immediately you're calling 211. That don't call your mom. Don't like you've got to calling
Great advice.
211.
Great
Okay.
advice, right? Get a list.
Do you think it's trickier for like newborns to get on a list or very small babies, or do you think it's trickier if you're trying to maybe jump back into working and your child is 2 or 3?
I think it's both, right? Infant care is so difficult to find because the spots are so limited. And that's simply because we only have 4 with one teacher, whereas when you have a preschool, you can have up to 16 with one teacher. Well, with 2 teachers rather. So the ratio is 8 to 1. So when you look at those tiny little ratios, it is really an expensive program to run, so not everybody does it. But then by the time they're toddlers, anybody that did enroll their child as an infant or a 1-year-old already has those spots. So, one thing we kind of encourage parents to do is to at least engage with the program part time when their babies are little. Even if it's just a couple days a week so that they can go to lunch with their friend or they can, if they're working or whatever it is, just to help socialize that child, but also build that relationship with the provider because I can tell you that's who they're going to give the full-time spot to when that person decides their child is 2, wants to go full-time.
Absolutely. And then, like you said, if they have another child and they already have a child enrolled, they have a little bit of an in with that program.
They definitely do, right? Because we don't want to lose the older ones. So, and we know and love that family, right? We already adore them and, we want to continue to be a part of their family. So, I would say engage early.
Okay, perfect. So, Lori, I really want to know, what do you think? Are things going to get better, or do you think as the Treasure Valley continues to grow, it's just going to become even more difficult to access childcare?
Well, with the current trend, it feels like it's just going to become more difficult. I know that Mayor McLean is on top of this, right? This is something that she and the city council are very concerned about because how do we attract big business here when people can't find childcare and when we're 50th in the union for early childhood opportunities and when we're very low in terms of school readiness and education overall? How are we going to attract them when we don't have that infrastructure? So it's a state problem, but it's also a city problem. And I would say the city of Boise is actively trying to address this and keeping that as an awareness that needs to be addressed.
So Boise's making up for the lack of investment from the state again?
Well, they're not actually investing with funds at this time,
Okay.
but they have in the past when they had funding that wasn't being used by the legislature. It was brought into the city and benefited providers in the city. So there's definitely been investments in the past, and I think there is that will and excitement to build up this industry in the city, um, which is wonderful for people that work in the city or live in the city, being able to, access. But Boise has its own problems too with availability as it's growing. Childcare isn't growing quickly enough with it.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing about Boise is there's so many surrounding communities
Hmm.
where a parent or guardian might work in Boise, but the family lives in Meridian or Eagle or Cuna or Nampa. And so that's still, without that investment or that infrastructure, those families are still left behind.
Absolutely.
So, what steps can people take to advocate for the childcare investment that we obviously need in this area? Like, what resources are available for them to do that?
What a great question. Thanks for asking it, Lindsay. So there is a group called Voices for Children, and one of their initiatives this year is the Office of the Child. And so trying to establish an Office of the Child that would really focus in on some of this stuff. And there seems to be some bipartisan support for it. If you contact your representatives in any district, blue or red, it doesn't matter, but especially those red districts, and just let them know that this is important to you, that you want to see this Office of the Child happen, then there will be one specific office that will just be focused on these issues to promote this in our state. There unfortunately hasn't been a will. There's kind of this prevailing attitude that women should be at home with their children. And I don't know how a woman or a man does that when they're a single parent.
Yeah.
It just isn't possible. And even if they aren't a single parent, it's really difficult for people, for families to live in a one income family. And sometimes impossible, not just
Yeah.
difficult. So I think, engaging with your representatives, that's what they're there for. They're elected whether you voted for them or not. That's what they're there for. And the power of the parent and the power of their constituents, that voice is just so powerful and important to be heard.
Lori, thank you so much. I really appreciate you diving into this topic. It can feel a little controversial and people have a lot of opinions about it. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Lindsay. I really appreciate it.
That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, check out our website for more news and guides to our community, boise.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning to discuss how tiny homes could be an affordable housing solution for Boise.